Friend Movement started just under a year ago when Elliot London and I sat down to a cup of coffee and started talking about how we wanted to make a difference with our art. He wanted to create a film that addressed bullying, especially after the Tyler Clemente suicide. Mm-hmm. He really wanted to create something special that spoke to that in a real way. And I wanted to create a grassroots effort and photo campaign that did similar work. And so instead of going our separate ways, we decided to create a hybrid. And so actually the narrative film called Friend is actually going to feature a photo campaign that one of the characters creates and brings to real life that everyday people will be able to be a part of. He went on the road for about a month interviewing kids in 2012 that were actually being bullied and on the verge of suicide. And he compiled these videos and used them as inspiration to create the narrative. So it'll be loosely based on real stories that he collected. We're going to be creating that narrative. It's a full feature narrative, and we'll also be doing a documentary of how do you create a social movement? How do you inspire change? How do you bring people together to make a real difference? Mm-hmm. Well, it takes all kinds. I mean, you need those people on the ground level doing the legislative work, the pounding of the pavements, the knocking on the doors to get those signatures, because I think that is important in its own right. But as artists, we tell stories. And I think that's, and Adam and Jeff are good friends of mine, and I love what they're doing. We've been inspired by them. But as artists, we get to tell stories. And in the telling of those stories, we get to kind of break down barriers and walls in a different way. We get to speak from the heart and connect with people at the human experience. And I think that's what it does in an instant. Because I think when you start talking politics and you start getting into how you feel about things, you put up barriers, you put up these walls.
Polarizing,
it's
yeah.
polarizing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you never really get to what's at the heart of the situation, what's going on. And so what we're hoping to do with a little bit of an edgier campaign called The New F Word is to really reach out to the bullies, to the people by speaking their language. And we're saying no more fatty, no more freak, no more faggot, but the new F word is now friend. Mm-hmm. And we're making it cool to stand up to bullying. Well, it is a power struggle at the end of the day. People wielding power over one another. It's this big game of life and trying to figure out where you fit and where you belong and what you're supposed to be doing. And I think when you are feeling less than, it's much easier to project those criticisms that you have for yourself onto someone else to make yourself feel better. At the end of the day, Friend Movement, it goes beyond anti-bullying. We're moving into pro-friend because it's a very simple concept. What does it look like to be a friend to someone? Mm-hmm. We get so distracted with everyday life and this garbage that we see on TV and the fear that's instilled in us. We want to kind of take it back a little bit and talk about how does it look like to be a friend? How do you support someone to follow their dreams? How do you respect someone? And how do we teach other people how to treat us? Because a lot of times you fall into the role of being the victim. If people are making fun of you or something, it's very easy to be, oh, woe's me, and be depressed. But really, you have to look at your action and your inaction. And have you given that other person the opportunity to correct their behavior and say, hey, that hurts? Will we ever completely eradicate bullying? Probably not, but I do believe in the balance of light and dark, talking about Oz and all of this stuff. But I mean, it's like, I think you can tip the scale, and I think you can add light wherever you go and bring positive energy. And to your other note about it not being an LGBT movement, you're absolutely right, because Elliot and I may happen to be gay, but we don't fit in a box. I don't think anyone fits in one label. And we're trying to kind of discourage the use of these labels to try and just, keep someone down, because there's so much more to life. We want to turn the bystander into the upstander. Yeah. And I think one of the prohibiting things for people to change from bystander to upstander is fear. I mean, because what if you're walking down the hall and you see someone being bullied? If you step in, there's a really high chance that bullying is now going to be directed at you, and you could either be physically or mentally abused as well. So that's a lot to ask of one person. Mm-hmm. I actually went to the Santa Monica Library about a month ago and listened to Dr. Jana Huhoven from UCLA, and it was really quite phenomenal what she had to say for two reasons. One, she said if we all had at least one friend in our life to at least help us cope with what was going on, not necessarily make everything go away, but just cope with it, we would be better off and we would have less suicide rate. And the other thing, too, was I thought that bullies had low self-esteem, but in fact, there may be some low self-esteem there because they're having bullying at home or somewhere else, so they don't love themselves. But what's happening in school now is that when they do bully someone, they're getting inflated egos because just like what you said, the kids around them are snickering, applauding them on, not standing up for someone and doing something. So now they've learned this behavior that's being rewarded, essentially. Well, it is education, and a lot of times it's not providing any excuse for the parents, but especially in this economy, people are working very hard to make a living and are working long hours, so maybe aren't necessarily there for them, but also educating the parents on how to do it. There's no real national standard on how to handle bullying.
Yeah.
Like, is it really beneficial to put bullies in detention for an hour or two? Well, no, I don't think so.
No.
And no one at the Friend Movement believes that because they're going to sit there and think about how they're going to retaliate on either the teacher that put them there or the original victim. It's important that,
So what would you do in that? Because I'm curious. So it's because I agree, I don't think detention is what works.
Well, what Dr. Huhoven said was there's a lot of really great programs being implemented that even at their utopian state wouldn't be the answer, because what we're like putting a little group together for bullies like detention, or putting a group together for support for the bullied. Why just do it for these small groups of the populace in the school? Why not do it for the entire school, because the whole school can benefit from it? More counseling, because obviously there's something going on underneath that just, reprimanding someone and putting them in detention, that's not solving the issue. It's not solving why they bullied someone. And at the core, I think this is, again, about self-love and self-appreciation, because we don't love ourselves. A lot of us look in the mirror and we can't give ourselves a hug and say, I'm enough. Until we can love ourselves and our flaws and everything that we love about ourselves, how can we love anyone else? Even RuPaul knows that much. If you can't love yourself, how are you going to love anybody else?
Love RuPaul.
I love my Ru. But it's so true. They're words of wisdom, because we do project out on other people around us how we feel about ourselves. 1 in 4 kids in our country alone are being bullied. That's 25% of our youth population being bullied. 160,000 stay home from school every day saying, "Mommy, I'm sick." Because they're afraid of physical or mental abuse when they go to school.
Oh, I used to for me, I used to skip school to stay home and cry. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't skip school to go to the mall. I mean, there were days I did that too. But I remember when we moved from Seattle down to California, I was not fitting in. I just could not make a friend to save my life, and I would skip school to stay home and cry.
We want to share stories. We need people to remember, not to become complacent, to keep this conversation going. We don't have the answer necessarily at Friend Movement, but what we do have is a really positive way to keep putting out imagery and video and educational pieces out there, so that we can get to that resolve, so that we can come up with a way to suggest to each of the states individually, here's A, B, C, D that you can implement in your schools, and you will notice a reduction in suicide rates. You will notice a reduction in the bullying statistics. There's a lot of fun ways to get involved, actually, outside of visiting friendmovement.com, which you'll also be able to see the Entertainment Tonight piece. But our friends on Facebook and Twitter are changing their middle name to Friend, which is pretty easy and fun to do, to show support. And, I was noticing, during the Red Cross and Hurricane Katrina and the American Cancer Society, they use an incredible tool called Give Buy Sell. And so for 6 months, we've negotiated a deal with Give Buy Sell. We've given to the Mobile Give program, and we now have our own number that people can text BFF to 20222, and they can donate $10, and it'll go right to their phone bill.
So it's as simple, and for anybody out there that's never done it, you're not signing up for anything, you're not doing anything difficult. You literally text BFF, the letters
BFF to 20222, and it'll actually send you back, do you want to donate $10 to Friend Movement? And you just write back yes.
Yeah, it's a yes, and then the $10 comes off of your cell phone bill.
So comes off your cell phone bill.
You don't have to submit a credit card, you don't have to do anything else like that.
Easy as that. I'm so thankful to Elliot, my business partner, and we just brought on a new producer, Michelle Katz. Our photo team, we couldn't be here where we are today without Bianca Kosoy and Ryan Forbes and Julie Bennett and Donna Gast and our angel donors, the people that believed us in the beginning. I can say one thing about my life, and I'm very close to my way, as sung by Frank Sinatra. I do things my way, and maybe it's not always the right way in hindsight, but I can tell you that I'm not going to go to my grave with any regrets. You know, I live and learn, and I'm not afraid to fuck up. I'm not afraid to fail, and, you know, that's what success is made of, and you just keep getting up, and you keep going after for what you want. And, you know, the unfortunate part is other people will try and tear you down once you start to achieve that success. But, you know, you just got to keep going forward and projecting out into the world what you want, and it will come. Because I tell you, I'm so blessed now to be surrounded by such great friends. I have amazing friends, and I'm hoping that our work, you know, it's only been a year. I hope in the next 6 to 12 months that it only increases exponentially, and that you guys can come to the table, be a part of it, and your listeners will join us too. I'm just so thankful.
You guys can follow Ronnie. He's on Twitter at Ronnie Kroell, Kroell. And of course, go to friendmovement.com. Does that have a Twitter? And
it does.
Too?
It's Friend Movement 1. But if you go to friendmovement.com, you'll see all of our social media. We're on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook. And I don't know if we're on Instagram yet, but we should be.
And we can make a splash.
Yes.
We can make a splash. We'll change
It's
our
all
name.
about Instagram.
I love Instagram.
I'm going to add friend to my name on Twitter today.